A very long time ago, I coined the YouTube channel of truth paradox. Have a look at this. I've invented something. It's called the YouTube channel of truth paradox. It states without exception that if a channel has the word truth in its name, then you can guarantee that the contents of said channel is a load of old cobblers. Do a search now. You'll see. Now, of course, there is one exception. Seek truth, speak truth. How you doing, buddy? So, when I saw a YouTube channel called Standing for Truth, I thought this would be an excellent opportunity to test out the paradox. Hello all and welcome along to another episode of Tinfoil Tuesday with me, Simon Dan. Thank you very much for joining me. Before we begin, a quick mention from me that after several requests, I've now joined Cameo. I'm available for shout-outs, birthday messages, a moral boosting speech for your students, whatever you want. I'll leave the link in the description so you can check out my profile. Really keen to connect with all of you. Cheers. Right, back to today's video where Standing for Truth is going to address an issue that I have pointed out on several anti-evolution responses that I've done before. And that, of course, is the issue of inbreeding. You start with two people, then incest seems inevitable, does it not? Not so, according to Standing for Truth. Away you go, good sir.
Independent origins moment number 4. Inbreeding and the biblical model of ancestry.
So, Standing for Truth has some reasoning when it comes to the ancestry of the human race in the Bible. Okay?
Okay, guys. Here we go. We've got another moment. Independent origins moment number 4. And I'm excited for this one, okay? In the previous moment, independent origins moment number 3, we discussed the low genetic diversity. The low genetic diversity that confirms what? Well, it confirms that we have all originated from just two people, Adam and Eve.
Now, of course, as a population, the genetic diversity is relatively low. But a study published in 2004 found that 87.6% of the total modern human genetic diversity is accounted for by the difference between individuals.
Just thousands of years ago. And as we know, as we covered in that moment,
the low genetic diversity was exactly what biblical creationists expected to find. The evolutionary community, because of the evidence, had no choice but to resort to a hypothetical out of Africa population bottleneck.
The thing is though, it's not hypothetical. The oldest fossils are found on the African continent. Additionally, the DNA evidence and the fossil evidence both point to Africa as our starting place as a species, independently.
In order to explain away the low genetic diversity found in human beings.
This is essentially storytelling. This is a rescue device.
Really? You want to call this storytelling? Okay then.
And it's an invention that was invoked, okay, simply to explain away the genetic related data. Okay, the genetic related data that doesn't support ape to man evolution, nor does it support universal common ancestry in general, okay?
That's a bold-faced lie. It absolutely supports that. We have the genetic information for 9 different species of human. 9!
So, as we know, according to their post hoc ad hoc story, it would have been highly damaging since it consisted of not just a one generation bottleneck followed by rapid and exponential population growth like us, like our model, okay? It consisted of an extended bottleneck, a prolonged bottleneck in order to reduce levels of genetic diversity.
Not at all. Homo sapiens interbred with other species of humans. In fact, research of the mitochondrial DNA of specimens from Germany found that Homo sapiens were mating with Neanderthals around 220,000 years ago. There is also evidence to suggest that Homo sapiens mated with other archaic human species as well.
That they did not predict, by the way. This is why it is exactly a post hoc ad hoc rescue device. It was essentially a near extinction event, an event that was connected with severe inbreeding. And we know genetically, we know what inbreeding does. We know what the effects are.
Indeed we do, but Homo sapiens did not do that. Interbreeding is defined as breeding with closely related people over generations. There weren't 1 or 2 families of Homo sapiens to start with, and as indicated earlier, Homo sapiens bred with other human species as well. Here is my personal DNA profile image. Look, I am 99.9% European. No surprise there, but crucially, I have around 2% Neanderthal genes in my genome. Why is that? Because my ancestors mated with them.
Because these mutations, okay, they come to the forefront and they lead to rapid and accelerated genetic degeneration. They're manifested essentially because of inbreeding.
And there is a lot of evidence to suggest that other than Homo sapiens breeding with them, interbreeding is what finally killed the Neanderthals off.
This is not a good thing, and this is why this fairy tale that the evolutionary community invokes is not even somewhat, okay, not even somewhat reasonable. And this is why those who hold to evolutionary theory and ape to man evolution, okay, this is why they have an unsolvable problem.
Do we? Really?
And this is the issue. This is the issue with explaining all DNA differences, all DNA diversity as a result of what? As a result of mutations, as a result of genetic mistakes over time, essentially. As we know, and as we covered in Independent Origins moment number 1, we talked about the design diversity hypothesis. That we start with the assumption that God would have front-loaded Adam and Eve, which applies universally across the biblical kinds. God would have front-loaded them with created nuclear heterozygosity, because when God said to be fruitful and multiply, did God mean for this to be carried out through cloning? Of course not. Of course not. God did not say to be fruitful and clone yourselves. He said be fruitful and multiply. So this is why the starting point of design diversity makes sense both theologically and scientifically, okay?
Okay, but it was just 2 people. And you want to say that Homo sapiens had an interbreeding problem. Right.
Now, here's what I find funny, guys. The fact that the critic will very frequently, okay, and I've had almost 100 debates, and I have discussed and debated the critic on this argument more times than I could count. Essentially, if I had $1 for every time this argument was utilized by the critic, I'd be probably a trillionaire, to be honest with you.
A trillionaire? So 1 trillion times in 100 debates, which is 10 billion times per debate. Right, let's say that argument given took 10 seconds to give. That would mean each of your debates lasted 3,170 years. And you've had 100 debates, which means you've been going at this for at least 317,000 years. How old does the Bible say the earth is again?
It's based on a straw man and a misrepresentation of our starting point and our model. Okay. The argument has to do with inbreeding. They'll say we have an inbreeding problem according to the biblical base model of ancestry and independent origins. Okay.
Well, I don't understand how it's not a problem. There were originally 2 people, according to the Bible, a man and a woman. When they have children, then it just doesn't work.
Here's the thing, though. As I said, it's based on a straw man. It's based on a misrepresentation. There's no problem at all. Let me briefly explain why we don't have a problem.
This will be interesting.
With inbreeding like the evolutionists do. Think about it. According to the model of independent origins, okay? According to our model of biblical ancestry, we start with just 2 people, Adam and Eve. Okay? Adam and Eve were specially created by God, okay? Just roughly 6,000 years ago. And then 10 generations later, we have a second bottleneck of what? Of just 8 people. Okay, Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, and their wives. Okay, so 8 people.
So you've got 2 inbreeding problems then.
At creation, since we hold to the design diversity hypothesis, Adam and Eve would have started with no mutations. No mutations. This goes back to genetic entropy, okay? We take this point of most accumulating mutational load, okay? This point of most genetic entropy, okay? Take that back to a point in time of least accumulating mutations. Okay, a point of least genetic entropy, that would be point of creation. That would be this point of Adam and Eve with no mutations. Okay, so 10 generations later, we now have this second another benign bottleneck. Okay. It is a single generation bottleneck, also followed by rapid and exponential growth.
The thing is, I'm not really worried about Noah's family for this one because they've come from inbreeding anyway. What I am worried about is the animals. So what you're claiming then, surely, is that every single animal on Earth is the product of inbreeding.
Now remember, inbreeding reveals the hidden reservoir of genetic mistakes. If there are no genetic mistakes, okay, to be manifested to lead to the negative and damaging problems that inbreeding results in, okay, according to our model, Adam and Eve would have had no mutations, and at the flood there would have been some mutations, but not nearly enough to lead to the type of genetic degeneration that the evolutionary model would consist of. Because remember, the evolutionists explain all DNA differences as the result of mutations over time. So by the time they get to their bottleneck, okay, they've had millions of years of mutation accumulation, because adding mutations adds genetic diversity. So they explain the origin of genetic diversity, that natural selection can act upon this variation, okay?
But because of natural selection, these mutations don't always end up in a species that survives. Of all the species that have ever lived on Earth, 99.9% of them are now extinct. Natural selection is a bitch. It really is. So those mutations which you claim are accumulating are not. They are being weeded out systematically and methodically by natural selection.
They explain this as the result of mutations. So now they've got a ton of mutations that are just waiting to be manifested, just waiting to be revealed in order to lead to rapid, essentially, genetic degeneration. Okay, well, we explain the majority of DNA differences as a result of created nuclear heterozygosity. Okay, so according to the biblical model, okay, both bottlenecks, creation and the flood, were extremely brief.
Okay, but there still would have to been inbreeding for that population to grow.
Okay, just one generation. It's a one generation bottleneck, not an extended bottleneck like the evolutionary community believes in. And most importantly, it was followed up by explosive growth, rapid and exponential population growth. Okay, this means that most of the original created heterozygosity would not have been lost. They would have retained most of it, okay?
Okay, so super fast inbreeding.
Based on the fact that these bottlenecks were brief and followed up by rapid and exponential population growth. So the whole point is, guys, okay, in both bottlenecks, you'd have almost no accumulated mutations, okay? So no negative, essentially, inbreeding effects genetically.
But there was still only 2 people. Am I missing something here? Is he saying it's not classed as inbreeding because there was no negative effects? The definition of inbreeding doesn't care about the results of it. It's defined as breeding between closely related people. Now, Adam and Eve, obviously not related, but their children, let's have a look at them. Cain was Adam and Eve's eldest son, and his wife was Awan, who was his sister. Okay, what about Abel? His wife was Lalua, who was, Cain's twin sister. Surely Seth did better. By the very definition, they were inbreeding.
Okay, that means that the extremely limited genetic diversity is most consistent with the biblical base model. When God created 2 people, automatically this restricted genetic diversity. And all of this genetic data that we now have did not have to be true. Okay, this is why we don't have to resort to fairy tale and far-fetched mental inventions in storytelling, okay?
And that is the most hypocritical thing I've ever heard someone say. I think we're done on this one. Seriously though, as I've said many times, I will defend your very right to believe in the Bible, but you have to admit there's an issue here. Well, there we go, another Tinfoil Tuesday all wrapped up in a nice little interbreeding package. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then please do drop a like on the video and subscribe as well. I've been Simon Dan. Have yourselves a great week, and I'll see you all Friday where Phuket Word asks, why would they lie? See you all then.